Hey everyone, Jason here, aspiring entrepreneur and digital marketing consultant, and in this sales funnel builder tutorial, you're going to be learning the innovative snap funnel builder method that I've been using for myself and clients to create automated webinar sales funnels in weeks instead of months. And when you copy and paste this process, you'll be able to cut the time it takes to put together your automated webinar or evergreen sales funnel in half, even if you've never put together a sales funnel before. In fact, when we first shared this snap funnel builder method with our clients, they were able to create their own automated webinar sales funnels completely on their own without our help. It was like they had been building funnels for years. It was actually pretty amazing. And at the end of the video, when you stick around, I'll be sharing an advanced webinar strategy to re-engage and convert webinar attendees and replay attendees who watched the webinar or watched the replay and didn't buy. Now we'll kick things off by going through the different parts of the sales funnel briefly, then I'll go through the 4 phases of the snap funnel building method, and then we'll wrap things up with a brief overview of how to put together each one of those 5 elements along with that pro tip when you stick around till the end. So the first step in the webinar sales funnel is, of course, the landing page. Then you have the confirmation page, you have the webinar itself, and then you have your checkout page. And optionally in advanced, you can have a re-engagement sequence that drives people to a replay or something else that we'll talk about in the advanced tip at the end. I do want to note that most webinar softwares out there will have a templated process for this replay function, and you'll actually need an advanced email integration if you want to customize those replay and re-engagement messages. So now we'll dive into the 4 phases of the snap funnel builder method, and then we will walk through individually those 5 components of the automated webinar sales funnel. So this process is going to help you get up and running with your automated webinar sales funnel as quickly as possible. And as counterintuitive as this is going to sound, the first phase of building your automated webinar sales funnel using the snap funnel builder method is actually to not have it a webinar. That's right, you actually don't want to have it a webinar. So there are 3 mechanisms of your automated webinar, and so I hope that this brief overview of these 3 mechanisms is going to help really understand why it's important not to try and start off with a webinar. So the 3 mechanisms are your lead generation mechanism, then you have your conversion mechanism, and finally you have your checkout mechanism. Now, the conversion mechanism is the webinar itself and everything that goes into the replays and the re-engagement. The lead generation and the checkout will stay virtually the same across all different types of automated webinar systems. And so the reason that you want to do this quickly is because you want to get up and running as fast as possible. The whole point of this process is to have your webinar sales funnel up and running before it's actually ready. And the only way you can have it up and running before it's ready is to have it up and running before you've actually chosen and set up your webinar software, because setting up that webinar software is a very, very time-consuming process. And so what you want to do is whatever landing page builder you're going to have, you're going to go ahead and put together your landing page. And on your landing page, you'll just say that it's an on-demand webinar or just-in-time webinar instead of having people choose their date and time. Later on, you can go ahead and just easily swap out that button. But what's important is you're testing that lead generation mechanism of your automated webinar sales funnel. That is one of the biggest issues we've seen with clients and with our own funnels. You just don't have the time to wait until everything's done and perfect before you start testing that front end, because testing that front end is going to take twice as long as you think. And so once you have that landing page, then you go ahead and you set up your webinar as just a normal sales video. And then finally you have your checkout page, whatever software that you're using. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, once you have all of that done, you're actually not going to be setting up your webinar software yet. You're going to go ahead and write your re-engagement sequence. So this is going to be 3 to 5 emails that essentially take people who saw the webinar but didn't buy for whatever reason and push them back to watch the replay. And so you want to write all of this out while you're still in copywriting mode, coming off of writing your webinar and your landing page. And so once you have those 3 to 5 emails, you've added them to your autoresponder and then set up a different page for your webinar replay. And you're actually going to be using this page even when you set up your automated webinar software, just because of some control issues. But we get into that much more in detail in webinar software reviews. I'm just telling you, save you a bunch of time, set up that replay page on your own site so you can have all of your tracking there. So once you've set that component up, Then you're ready to go in and choose your webinar software. Now, I recommend Stealth Seminar or EverWebinar. Link in the description to comprehensive reviews of both of those. But you're going to go ahead and set up your webinar inside of one of those two systems, or a different one if you decide to go a different route. And what's so powerful about the Snap funnel building process is you are now already driving traffic and you're already testing that lead generation mechanism of your sales funnel, which is super important. So hopefully by the time you set up and go through the arduous process of getting all that software set up in phase number 3 with your webinar stuff, your lead generation mechanism has already had lots of traffic come to it, and you've already been able to refine that headline and refine that messaging. So that way you're doing two things at once. You're refining that front end and you're building that center conversion mechanism back end. And hey, you might even get some sales going through the process, because your copy is going to be what determines whether or not you sell, not necessarily how advanced or fancy your automated webinar software or system or follow-up sequence is. Once you've done that, you're ready for step number 4, which is to simply turn on the sales funnel software. So you've had your lead generation mechanism and your checkout mechanism already set up. They've already been running because you set that up in number 1, and all you're doing with that center conversion mechanism is you're switching out that sales page that you have for your webinar software. And so that does it for the Snap Funnel Builder method, and that's how you can quickly set up your automated webinar sales funnel and actually start generating data and sales before you go through that arduous process of getting all that software up and running. So now that we've covered how to put it together, we're going to transition, and I'm going to walk you through each one of those 5 elements of your automated webinar sales funnel, and then we'll wrap up with that pro tip. Again, there's a comprehensive table of contents in the description. And kicking things off at number 1 is your landing page. Now, there's not a whole lot you need to do with the landing page, and actually the simpler the better, because what you want to do with your landing page is be testing that headline, be testing your messaging. And so there's a couple of things you want to do with the headline. The headline should communicate the result they want, some information gap or secret that they don't already know. So thinking about that headline, you want to think of it as your prospect is at point A and they want to get to point B. Point B is the result that they want. There's a big gap in the middle, and that gap is the perceived information that they don't know, the perceived roadblock that they have. And so the headline should communicate that that gap is going to be filled, and they will be able to have result B by the end of it. So the headline simply should communicate to your prospect what they can expect on the webinar and the fact that they are going to have that gap filled. And of course, there's a lot that goes into figuring out what that gap should be. But the nice thing is you can test multiple different headlines to figure out which headline and marketing hook or big idea works best for your audience. Now, the second step, the confirmation page, will most likely be a template from your webinar software. And really all you need to do on this page is have a short video of you talking directly to your webinar attendees. And it should be a live video, what I recommend doing, because you want to prove that you're a real person and you just want to show your authentic self. And the call to action for this video is to have them add the webinar date or time to their calendar. So you'll start by introducing yourself. You'll repeat again why they signed up for the webinar. You want to reinforce their decision to. You want to make them feel comfortable and smart, like they are actually taking the correct steps to fill that gap that your landing page talked about and that they have in the back of their mind, the reason why they signed up for the webinar. And then of course, finally telling them to add the webinar date and time to their calendar. So the next step of the automated webinar funnel is of course the webinar itself. Now, this could be an entire course. So in the description, there's a link to a playlist that goes over all of these elements in depth. There's a video on each one of these elements. And in the Aspire notebook, you can check out the link in the description. There is a free webinar writing template as well, along with a really comprehensive swipe file of a lot of webinars that you can watch and kind of understand how to structure them. The main thing you want to do with your webinar is make sure that you fill that information gap or fill that secret that you talked about on your landing page, and of course, provide actual value. Nobody wanted to show up to your webinar and find out it's just a 45 or 90-minute pitch. It really actually needs to solve a problem. And the best way to do this is to solve a problem and provide information that your prospect would need to make a buying decision to purchase your product or service. Now, the next step is the checkout page. There's not a whole lot to this other than making sure that you have all of your security certificates on there if you do have them, and be sure to re-communicate the guarantee and the bonuses they get if they purchase the product, along with any test. You can also have testimonials on there as well. We found that that works to help to reduce shopping cart abandonment. And finally, we have the follow-up, and you can get as simple and advanced as you want. The good news is, following the Snap Funnel Builder method, you've already written all of these emails, so it's just a matter of taking those emails and integrating them with your webinar software, which I can tell you from personal experience, using Stealth Seminar and EverWebinar is a real headache, which is why in the Snap Builder method, we have you write the emails first, because it's going to take you quite a while to get all of those integrations working properly, and then of course testing them properly to make sure the right people are receiving the right emails at the right time. But this is just a 3 to 5 email sequence, going through some objections that your prospects may have and reiterating some key points of your training on the webinar, as well as the benefits of your product or service that you're offering. And that is all there is to it, to putting together an automated webinar sales funnel. So now you have everything you need to get up and running as quickly as possible with your webinar sales funnel, as well as detailed information on how to put together each one of those 5 steps. If you want to learn more about putting together your automated webinar sales funnel, and you're looking for a swipe file and you're looking for some done-for-you copy and paste templates, you can go ahead and sign up for the Aspire Notebook, link in the description. And that actually has a complete training on how to put together an automated webinar sales funnel, along with lots of templates and swipe files of successful webinars and landing pages. And now for that advanced re-engagement sequence. So at this point, your webinar sales funnel looks something like this. And when you want to take it to the next level, it will look something closer to this. Now, I know we've added quite a few new elements here, so let's go through each one of those. The first 2 are 2 videos that you can add in addition to the welcome video before the webinar. And so this method was pioneered by Frank Kern. This is not something that I personally use, but I've seen used on several webinar sales funnel sequences. And essentially what these videos are designed to do is to build excitement around the content of the webinar, as well as handle some objections to showing up to the webinar. So like you have objection handlers in your sales pitch on your webinar, you essentially have these videos to handle objections and build the value leading up to the webinar. So these are like 2 mini launch videos, if you will, to see the benefit and push more people onto the webinar. Now, it is important to note that from a software perspective, these are very, very difficult to set up, and you're most likely going to be needing to use something advanced like Infusionsoft or Ultraport. Something like MailChimp or Aweber in most cases just isn't going to cut it, because you need to be able to have these timed correctly depending on when someone is supposed to watch the webinar. And of course, if you're doing a instant or on-demand webinar or top of the hour webinar using Stealth Seminar, these videos are not a good idea, because you don't want to send 2 or 3 videos when they're supposed to be watching your webinar in an hour. Now, something that everyone can do that is relatively easy from a tech standpoint is doing a back-end launch sequence. And so this is something else that we've seen work really effectively in other people's automated webinar sales funnels, where you essentially have a complete launch funnel on the back end of the webinar. So if they watch the webinar, you send them to the replay, and your prospects still aren't having it, they still, they still don't want to buy your product or service, then what you can do is you can go take a deep, deep dive into more objections that you can handle. Another great thing to do with these 2 or 3 videos is to go into case studies and try and think of different situations that your ideal prospect or customer would be in, and have case studies that illustrate how the product or service fit that specific life situation and helped someone achieve the result that they were looking for. And if you're really out of ideas in terms of content or re-engagement or providing more value, then you can always take 2 to 3 golden nuggets directly out of your product or service and share them in that sequence, because at this point, you really don't have a lot to lose. You're just going to provide as much value as possible and really build the benefit of your product or service. It is important that these videos and the sales page that you can optionally put below the video are in fact valuable. They shouldn't just be rehashes of your pitch over and over again. You can have a pitch at the end, but it is important that each one of those pages does provide real value in addition to or on top of the value that was provided in your automated webinar. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this video informative and actionable. If you got some value out of it, go ahead and hit that like button and then subscribe, because over on my channel, I'm documenting the entire process on what it takes to build an online business from scratch. And setting up a automated webinar sales funnel or evergreen webinar sales funnel is just one small piece of that bigger picture of putting together an online business from nothing. And in the Aspire notebook, you can check that out in the link in the description as well. You have a complete done for you automated webinar sales funnel template and training for each one of those elements, as well as a really comprehensive swipe file to help you with your copy and putting together your automated webinar. So go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions about putting together your automated webinar. And as always, keep building the business you love. Take care.